It had me muted for no reason. Sorry about that. Surprise, everybody. You got just Matt here for Astrology and Alchemy with Paranormal Sarah and Matt. But Paranormal Sarah is not available tonight. She is having, I think, good family holiday time. So it is just me tonight, which makes it a little different. So we'll see. I'll stay on. You know, she's done it solo without me a bunch of times. So I figured I would return the favor here, and instead of canceling the show, at least try this solo. We'll see how well it works. I don't do the readings and the aspects for the week and the calendar that she does. So I don't have that with me right now. Hello, Teresa. And so what we're going to do tonight is a couple things. I'm going to go, first of all, question and answer. So any questions people have, I'm willing to take them because we don't get as much time for that. You're usually going over the aspects for the week, and then we kind of chat a lot as well. That usually fills up the hour. So use this time for any questions that folks might have, as well as a couple extra things I'm going to go ahead and cover. You're not going to have me sing. That's definitely not something that's going to happen. As my daughter's out in the hallway laughing. Yeah, I will not sing. But then also for folks that are so inclined, I know Sarah does this, and we've done a couple shows together on this, is I got my steampunk deck here as well. So if folks want a card, whether you want to type in a question or whether you just want a regular question, keep it in your head, and I'll just go ahead and pull. I can do that as well. So in the chat, if you have a question you want to have, feel free to let me know. Or if you just want me to pull a card, I can do that as well. So also, if you have any questions, we can go ahead and do that. But I do want to talk a little bit about, particularly since it's the end of the year, some other types of charts you can do. And you can look these up on astro.com, or you can have people go ahead and do these for you. I do this. Sarah does these as well. Sure thing, Samantha. There's something called a solar return, which can give you the outlook for the year, basically from your birthday on. And I always think about my birthday is at the end of the week from tonight, so I won't be on next Tuesday. So mine always correlates with the end of the year, so mine's easy to do. My solar return really holds up with the year as a whole, but you can also do a lunar return, which gives you predictions for the month. And what that means is, if you think about it in your birth chart, your sun's at a certain point in the sky when you're born. And once a year, the sun returns to that exact same spot. But what's different is all the other planets are in different spots than they were when you were born. And so what you look at is the positions of all the different planets, what signs they're in, what houses they're in. We're going to do a little bit about houses tonight, too, because we usually don't get a chance to talk about houses as well. And then you look at the different aspects, because they'll be different compared to when you were born. And you can use that to make predictions for the year. And so I've started experimenting with this. I've had some pretty interesting things happen the last couple of years since I've done this. Yes, happy solstice for those who celebrate or observe. Shortest day of the year. So I always find that interesting. So so it's good. Also, the lunar return is the same thing. Once a month, the moon hits the exact same spot it was when you were born. And you can use that. And again, all the planets will be in different spots. They'll be in different houses. You can go ahead and look at the different aspects. When we talk about those angles, square, trine, sextile, conjunct, opposite, the things that we normally talk about during this week, you can look at those different positions, and that can give you predictions for the month. And so what I like to do is I like to do all at once around this time of year. I will do the solar return. We always laugh at that. I can't go on mute because I'm the only one here, so I usually have to deal with the dogs, which were quiet until I started doing this show. Dang. So anyway, I do the solar one for the year, and then I go ahead and do all the lunars for each month for the year. And so like around my birthday, I have like the whole like predictions for the year and then predictions for the individual months that I can come back then and then check. So it's kind of interesting, but let's go ahead and do this. So Samantha, think of your question, and I will pull a card for Samantha. And Samantha gets, hopefully you guys can see this, the Six of Wands. Now, I call this, and you can kind of see the guy having his little parade there with people out watching. I consider this the good news card. So whatever you were thinking of, I would expect that you should receive a positive, at least how you view it. It would be a good answer or positive information coming to you regarding the question that you have. So hopefully that was helpful. Yeah, it's pretty interesting, Teresa. And so we're going to go through, and I'm just trying to get caught up here on some of these things. Yeah, so again, I'm pulling some cards. If anybody wants cards, you can put in a question in or just even request one, and I'll go ahead and do it. Teresa, okay, I will pull one for you. I also want to talk about the houses. So if you look at I don't have the one in front of me now, but if you look at the chart, like a birth chart, a lot of times it's shown as like a circle, and then you'll see there's like 12 pie slices. And so those 12 slices are the 12 houses. And they have numbers associated with them. And it's interesting that the 12 houses kind of correlate with the 12 signs to some degree. And then where your planets fall in those houses gives you a whole extra layer. So, you have your planet energy that I always talk about when we do like the book. You got Pluto in Capricorn, like trine. So you can have Pluto in Capricorn in fourth house. That just adds an extra layer to that equation. But it's dependent on your chart. So that's why, and you'll see some people in the chat. I know Dee that comes on will talk a lot about where planets are moving in her houses, things like that. It just adds an extra dimension. So I wanted to spend a little bit of time since we have it tonight to explain about this. So first of all, let me go ahead and do Teresa's on her question. All right, Teresa, I don't view this as a direct answer to your question, so this is very interesting. I got for you the Page of Cups. Now, again, this is kind of world according to Matt and how this deck works. Pages can be people. The court cards can be people. I usually view pages as messengers. So conveying a message, whether that's a person that's going to interact with you that conveys the message or whether you're going to receive a message to this. And Cups is the water suit, so it is emotions. So I believe, even though this doesn't hit with finances, I believe that you will get a message to you with a emotional component to it. So I know not necessarily relevant to what you asked, but maybe that is the message that wanted to get out to you. So expect a message of emotion from someone. So, all righty. All right, Samantha, I'll get to those too. We'll go. I'm going to work these in. So I'm going to keep working these in here. So Steph is the next one. But I want to go through these houses. So the houses go through, the 12 different signs. And so your first house is also where your ascendant would be. So that's kind of the house that's at the horizon when you're born. And that is just, as you can kind of figure, just like what your ascendant, when we describe an ascendant, it is your core, kind of your core self. So it is kind of almost like what you associate with the sun. It is about just kind of core issues related to you. And so if you have, certain planets in your first house, that's going to be very much related to your character. I would actually expect that those planet energies would be very related and very evident in your in your character. So, like if you had like Uranus in the first house, I would expect you to be kind of a outside the box, a little rebellious, kind of what we usually describe as Aquarius energy. That would be very pronounced. And so, really, when you get at it, if your ascendant is Aquarius, and Uranus is in Aquarius. That's kind of like Aquarius energy squared. So you'd be a very like stereotypical Aquarian type personality on that. So, all right. So Samantha, just let me know. I don't know if it's that if you want a different card for that then, or if you're saying that the card I pulled answered that. But let's go ahead with Steph's. All right, there's another interesting one. So Steph, Six of Swords. So if you see this, you see like somebody kind of flying away on this balloon with somebody else. It's I always view this one as moving from one situation to another situation with help. So you kind of see here this person's piloting the dirigible with somebody else in there. So it's moving from one situation to another with help. Swords is thoughts, communications, things along that line. So I'd expect kind of air energy on this. It's the air suit, but also a energy of having someone help you move or transition from one situation to another. So hopefully that fits. Okay, cool. So Samantha said that answered her question. So fantastic. So I would expect good news on those. It's funny, Teresa, you say that. I'm a Cap, and I've just found that, and it's funny because I meet the people and then find out their birthdays or signs later. I would say out of all the signs, there's really 3 that pop up a lot, but Cancers are the most. I feel like I'm kind of obviously a sign, not the other version of it, a Cancer magnet. Leos and Tauruses. I seem to, in my circles, lots of people end up falling into those 3 categories, kind of in that order. I'd say Cancer, Leo, Taurus. Speaking of Taurus, so the second sign, or the second house, is the house of security. So it's finance, financials. What's interesting, like in my case, Pluto is in my second house. They say that whatever house Pluto is in for you is something that will be a lifelong struggle. So it's very funny. I could win, and I can tell you this has been my whole life. I could win $50,000 tomorrow, and I would have an unexpected thing happen within a week that cost me $50,000. It's like whatever comes in. Now, it's granted, it works kind of to the positive. Like I kind of stay even on these things, but financially, if there's ever a windfall, it's always an expectation of something else that's going to come and consume that. So I always view this as it's kind of like my Pluto in second house. But your second house is really related to finances. So again, you look at what sign is in your second house. You look at what planets might fall in your second house or what makes aspects to your second house, and that can give you additional information for yourself. Also, when we talk about these like solar or lunar returns, those planets are all in different houses. So that can tell you a different, like, let's say your sun on your solar return is in the second house. And let me know if I'm too confusing on this. Like I'm trying to explain it the way that I've learned it, and it makes sense. But if it's not making sense to you guys, I don't want to be rambling here. So if your sun on your solar return falls in the second house, the theme for this year could be very much along financial type things, or a moon in a lunar return. So kind of those houses help kind of set up your theme for the year, theme for the month, if you're doing a solar or a lunar return. All right, so let's, I'm sorry, I want to make sure I didn't miss anyone. So I got Steph's. Okay, Shine. What you gotta say, Shine? Happy to have you back. Field Guy, welcome back. Carson, happy to have you guys all on here. Again, I'm going solo tonight. Sarah's done it multiple times. I figured I got to at least try to do it here. So thank you for being patient and bearing with me on this. I don't have the same chart of aspects for the week that she has, so I'm doing this a little different tonight. So we're talking general astrology topics, kind of a little tutorial on answering any questions people might have, and I am pulling cards if people want. All right, so got to go back and look at Shines. Okay, I'm not calling out the things yet, but I'll obviously speak to it. So Shine's question, and I want to look at that again to make sure I have. All righty. Ooh, I get for you the devil. Okay, so this is not nearly as bad as you may think. Just like the death card isn't, actually the tower is the one I don't like. Now watch, I'm going to end up pulling it for somebody, but that's the one that I'm like the least. But the devil is, just think about it. It's temptation. It's possibly in the old traditional card, people are chained to a throne with the devil on it. So it's, in some cases it can be, are you stuck or are you serving some type of vice or some type of master that isn't necessarily good for you? So what I would say when I see this card, I think of a couple things. I think of temptation. I think of something that may be developing. This is definitely related to your question. Something that could be developing in your life that you want to take a really good, careful look at, because something could be developing that might look good, but in the long run will not be good for you. So again, it may look like a bad thing, but it's actually like a positive card that it's giving you a little bit of a warning to take pause and don't just jump very quickly if something looks good, because something out there might be a little too good to be true. So kind of trust but verify. So hello, Taps, Cody. Happy to have you on here. Again, hope this all makes sense. Again, what I'm doing is kind of a little tutorial, also pulling cards and also asking questions. Matt, you really don't have to keep telling the world that you're attracted to me. Oh, okay, Dolly. All right. So next is the third house. So the third house is, kind of think Gemini on this one. The third house is communication. So whatever planets are in your third house, whatever sign rules your third house, that will go around things related to communications, how you communicate. So if you are, I'm trying to think of a really good example here. If you had, let's say, Aries in your ruling your third house, you may be a very assertive, very blunt communicator. If you have Scorpio ruling your third house, you may be very secretive and more indirect in how you communicate. And again, you got to look at what planets are in there, what signs. What sign is over that house and things along those lines. So again, happy to have everybody on here. I see some new folks on here. Happy to have you. Steph, Field Guy was just on. He had messaged earlier on there, so I see him on there, Steph. So also next, fourth house. Also, you'll see this sometimes referred to. There's like the four angular houses: the ascendant, the descendant, the midheaven, and the IC. This is the IC. This is the one that's at the fourth house. It's the one at the bottom. If you just view it like a compass, it would be like south. And this is, they call it like home and hearth. So this is your home energy. I would say also kind of your comfort, maybe behind the scenes, kind of how you are in your private life. And so whatever sign you have on your fourth house, or whatever planets you may have in your fourth house, rule those types of energies. Or again, if you're doing like a solar or a lunar return, if you have a lot of planets in the fourth house, that can indicate that you're going to have a lot of issues around home, or a lot of themes around home. So, Dolly, it's funny. I did forget, but I think there's, from what I saw posted on here, I think there's like 3 or 4 cancers on here, which is why I wanted to point it out. It's just very interesting. I run into people that are cancers all the time. I think I got a couple fellow Caps on here too. I think Carson said he was a Cap, and I think there's been some others on here as well. So Carson, I'm going to pull your card. So think of your question. Carson, yes, we're getting a lot of major arcana cards, which is kind of cool. I got to do this the right way. I still can't get my left and right on these. The sun. So again, this is world according to Matt on how I view these things, but I always view the sun as clarity, clearing things. So whatever your question was, I believe you will get, just like the sun brings light and brings everything into view, you will get a very crystal clear view about whatever you asked about. So I would take this as a very, there's really nothing, there really aren't good or bad cards. They just are what they are. But this is one that, particularly if you're asking a question, I always view very favorably, in that you will get clarity on whatever your question was. Hopefully that makes sense. Let's see. Well, you know, Steph, sometimes if they're on, this is on multiple platforms. And so if you're on a different platform, what I found out on StreamYard is I see all the chats that people pull in, but you're only going to see the chats on the platform you're on. So, you know, if some people are on maybe Sarah's page or the Astrology and Alchemy page, they'll see things. If you're on Paranormal Channel, you might not see the chats that people are putting on the other pages. That's why I kind of, if it's a general thing, I'll try to call it out without ruining anything that would be, I obviously don't want to do anything like private or confidential and call it out for everybody. So yeah, he could be on the Facebook one. Anyway, moving right through the fifth house this is an interesting one. I always think, but again, it's just kind of where my head goes when we talk astrology type things. I think romance, but it can be a lot of things. It's kind of the house of fun and pleasure. So it can be romance, it can be hobbies, it can be children is viewed in this house as well. So it's entertainment. So it can be a lot of different things, but it's kind of an extroverted, fun, what do you do for enjoyment type energy on there, as well as kids, which, you know, depending on your mindset, can be viewed as a fun thing or not. So again, you look at what planets fall into those areas. If you have a lot of planets falling in a particular year in these return readings and things, that can emphasize that there could be some romantic energy going on or some type of fun type of energy. Sixth house, I have a little bit of trouble describing the sixth house. It has some varied things. It's can be work, but the 10th house also has an element, so there's a little bit of an overlap there. It can be work. If you think kind of like Virgo energy, it can be service, and it also can be health. So you get a lot of things in your sixth house. It could be a lot of related to how you work with others. So I view it almost like a coworker vibe. It's kind of how you interact and how you're providing service and doing things for other people, you know, whether it's your job or volunteering, but it can also be health things. So if you have a lot of stuff going on in your sixth house, particularly in a given year or a given month, it could indicate that either something's going on related to your work, or something could be going on related to health. And again, we look at things of different aspects as well. So if you have like, you know, Uranus or Pluto squaring something in the sixth house, that could indicate that, yeah, there could be some kind of health or job thing going on that isn't that great. So the houses are a whole nother, when we usually do these shows, again, because it's not a personal chart. A personal chart, we would add this element. You have, you know, the planet, the sign that gives you the energies. Then you have the house. Then you have the aspect, planet, sign, house. And so it just adds, I'm adding a whole nother layer on all of this. So Pepper, I'll pull you a card after the next one we do here, which the seventh house, which also is the descendant. So that is other people, kind of looking at others. But how this differs, there's some overlap with the 11th house. But what makes the seventh house interesting is this is long-term relationships. So this can either be family type things, or it can be marriage. What I'll usually look for when I see things going on in the seventh house first is kind of marriage aspects. So this can indicate things, you know, particularly going on, again, you do a solar return, lunar return, or look at what's even going on in your current aspects, where the current planets are in relation to your birth chart. That's another way you can look at this. Like I said, there's like hundreds of different charts that you can do. There's a lot of different ways you can dice things up. So it gets very, very complex. This can show different things that are going on in your marriage, or you know, kind of related, or a very close relationship. Even if you're not married, it could be, you know, long-term romantic relationship. It can be familial relationships, things along those lines. So that's what the seventh house is. All right. So yeah, so shine, it's kind of, I'd say fifth house or seventh house are more the love houses. 11th house is going to be social, but it's going to be more friendly. That's more platonic energy. Fifth house or seventh house would be, fifth house can be like romance in general, and then seventh house would be like serious long-term relationships, so that they're related. All right, I think it was Pepper that wanted to, so think of your question, Pepper. Yeah, seventh house would be Libra energy. So if you just think about that. But the seventh house isn't always Libra. That's what I'm saying. It's when we're defining the houses, it kind of helps doing it that way. But it all depends on when you're born, what signs on the horizon kind of sets where the houses are. All right, here we go. Pepper's card. Ooh, speaking of relationships, so this picture is very good and demonstrative of what the Two of Cups are. So the Two of Cups again is emotion to a pair. So this is a relationship. See here, they're kind of mixing their yin and yang energy here. This is a positive relationship. This is also early in the cup stage. So this is a early relationship. So I'm not sure what your question was, but I would say it's probably relating to a relationship with somebody else. It doesn't have to be romantic. It can be, it just involves energy with someone else, and it's going to be a positive thing. So whatever the question was, expect interactions with someone else in a positive way. All right, the eighth house is always very, very interesting. The eighth house, they refer to it as the house of death, sex, and taxes. It's transitions. It's big transitions. If you think I think the ruler over that one historically is Pluto. So again, it's kind of that big impersonal change coming. So it can be. So we talked about the romance type things again. Eighth house can be that too, but eighth house is kind of more behind closed doors type thing. So you could potentially have, let's say, a eighth house relationship or energy that's different than your fifth or your seventh. So it's just an interesting piece to look at. It can also be very big. I said sex, death, and taxes. So it can be some big financial thing, inheritance, or big unexpected bill. It could also be, as we said, like transitions. So think really big trades. So if you have a lot of energy, or solar return, lunar return, you're in the eighth house. It can indicate either some good sexual stuff going on, or it could indicate major transitions. And so if I see a lot of stuff, and again, it depends on the birth chart, and it depends on the all the other energies and all the other aspects. But depending on what's going on, if you got a lot of stuff going on in the eighth house, it could indicate some big changes going on in your life, for the year, for the month. Steph, you're totally right. It's not the love relationship house. It's big transitions or sex, but it's not necessarily, So if you got a lot of stuff going in your eighth house and you're asking, am I going to find my soulmate or anything? That's not like soulmate energy. That would be more like seventh house or fifth house leading to seventh house type stuff. Denise has a good question here. I'm going to go ahead, if you don't mind. I'm going to go ahead and pull this out here because we haven't done. I said it's Q&A, and I hope I didn't miss anybody else's questions here, because it's questions, cards, and then just a little tutorial stuff. How do you figure out your birth chart when you don't know your birth time? So you can only get part of it. You can get, and I know there's some people have different estimates, or where they'll say, you just use a generic time, but you got to realize that not knowing the birth time introduces error. One, mostly because the moon changes very fast. But your houses, what's on the horizon, the houses get set by your birth time. And so all this that I'm talking about right now about, houses and house energies and things like that, you won't have any of that with the time. It also primarily with the moon, because of how fast it moves, but it maybe a little bit more with, sun and Mercury, some of your angles. When we start talking about aspects, whether things are square, sextile, triene, that can make a difference based on time. The biggest one being the moon, because the moon moves the fastest. And so, Jupiter, Uranus, the ones that are farther out move so slow that's not going to really change depending on your birth time. But the houses, and that also sets your ascendant. So when we talk about like ascendant, descendant, that all gets set by birth time. So, you can still get some information. It's not like it's a total loss, but you have to realize that there's going to be some degree of error if you make an assumption, on birth time. I usually, if I don't know anything, I'll take halfway through the day. So I'll do 12 noon. I know other people don't, but I'm just going to split the day in half and go from there. but it does introduce error to it, and it definitely messes up. You won't really have accurate houses on things in an ascendant. I hope that makes sense. All right, pull that off. Get caught up here a little bit in the chat. Pepper, yeah. I mean, you can get. I mean, you can get information with just basic stuff. I mean, you think about how the newspaper people, the old newspaper horoscopes would just base it on your sun sign, and obviously people kept reading those, that they kept publishing them, so there must have been enough relevance to those things to get. So yeah, sun, a moon, and a rising sign. I can give basic information on that. Obviously, the more information you have, the better things can be. If that makes sense. Okay, let's go through here. Saturn returns, and that's interesting. Now, I don't do a lot with that. Now, a Saturn, this is interesting. So we're just talking about the lunar return is once a month. The solar return is once a year. Your Saturn will return. So basically, it's around, you get retrograde and you get all these things. But I believe it's around 29 years. So, around 29, around 58, your Saturn's going to go back to where it was at the time that you were born. And again, if you just think about what Saturn energy is, and I actually am just doing this kind of off the top of my head. I haven't read up on this in a long time, so forgive me. But, Saturn's rules, restrictions, typically I'll say, if you have a lot of whatever sign your Saturn's in, that's kind of going to be where you're going to have restrictions and kind of boxed in on things. So your Saturn return, if you look at all the different changes, that's kind of how the rules and maybe the walls of the box that you reside in change and shift. If that makes sense. All right, I'm trying to get caught up here. Oh, and Brianna wanted a card, so let me pull a card for her right away. And you got to remind me, I think we're on the 9th house. Brianna, oh, this is a good one too. So I don't know what your question was, but the Chariot, again, we're getting a lot of major arcana cards here. The one thing, I don't subscribe to this a whole lot. I just kind of use the cards as they are, but some people will say that, a major arcana card carries more weight, so it's more significant than if you get like just a regular like suit card. But if you just view the Chariot and you look at what she's doing here, she is driving the Chariot. And so this is motion, this is driving, this is initiative. So I would say, depending on what your question is, it could be telling you to take the initiative and drive things towards the answer that you want. That's kind of where my gut goes on that one. So, and Denise knows her daughter. So yeah, that's interesting. So Pepper, Jupiter's in Capricorn. So I'd want to know your house as well, but well, yeah. So yeah, Teresa, if you know early morning hours, you can at least try to like throw a ballpark in there. And again, it's going to get you closer to where it's at. It's just, there can be some error. That's the biggest thing I would say you need to realize. And happy birthday to your daughter, Denise. Jupiter and Capricorn, I view, again, Jupiter is that open, that car pulling up, it's opportunity, it's expansive. Capricorn is the achievement-oriented goat, climbing mountains. I think possibly somebody came home, so you may hear dogs barking soon. You have that climb, achieve. So I view this as energy in you will have expansive energy and opportunities in the achievement space. I would view this as almost a overachiever type energy. So you may have the opportunities to perform and do lots of good achievement type things, and those doors just seem to swing open for you. Now, a lot, again, depends on the other things in your personal chart, but in general, that's how I would describe a Capricorn in Jupiter and Capricorn. I'm sorry, I'm getting caught up here on. Thank you, Brianna. All right. All right. Yes, Steph, that's true. There's choices, but I always view the Chariot as like, there's choices, but it's on you to drive it which way you want to go. Some cards are a little more fatalistic, that, you know, it's out of your control and it's just going to go the way it's going to go. The Chariot is, it's in your control. So drive it the way you want to drive it. Well, Denise, if your mom is 98, so roughly 29 years, so that would be, she'd have 3. So, you know, around 29, 58, and then, oh God, I got to do the math. Would that be 87? Would be around the time you'd have your 3rd Saturn return. She's actually old enough then that basically, I believe it's a Uranus return, happens every 84 years. So, you know, once in your life, you get a Uranus return. And so that's a really interesting one. So, all right. So some folks wishing happy solstice and happy new year. Yes, same to you. Right here. Just getting caught up here. Sorry, guys. All right. Oh, Lilith. Yeah, Pepper, let me think a little bit on that one. This is one actually where I think Sarah has a better view on that one. There's a bunch of asteroids kind of out there that have names, and Lilith is kind of the call it kind of like the dark star or dark. It's an interesting. Yeah, Steph's got it. It's not tied so that purists here don't beat me up. It's not tied to 8th house, but I view kind of some parallels there. It's kind of the things behind closed doors, the energies that maybe you hide from other people. As Steph said, your dark side can be demonstrated by kind of where Lilith is at. So the sign that Lilith's in your birth chart can kind of give some of those energies that are in your dark side. And then again, you can look at the aspects at any given time. I've said before on here, you know, we do, kind of inner. Yeah, I don't mean it's evil. It's just kind of the dark side, which it's not what it's things that you don't put out in the open. It's the things that you keep hidden. It's broader than this, but I almost, you know, it's funny because I guess it's just a good analogy on it. You know, the one way to think of it, I always think of like just kinks. You know, it's stuff that people might like that people keep hidden, and so it's that kind of thing. But it's broader than that. It can be a lot of different things. So yeah, Steph has it. It's like your bad girl, dark desires, yeah, all that stuff. So then you can look at your birth chart once you know it, and you know we talk about the general things. Exactly, Steph. That's what I think of when I think of like Lilith and the dark hidden things. I think of kinks, but not. You're like reading my mind, but it doesn't have to be sexual. It can be other stuff. Anyway, you can look at the general aspects, what's going on, where the planets are right now, and then you can do this like on astro.com, or you can have someone like Sarah and I do it for you. But you know, day to day it gets hard. You can look at the different aspects during the day. So you know, for certain people out here, you may have the sun might be square your Venus, and so you know we're talking general things that are going on, but those same energies will be very different in how it plays out with you. And the same things would go on then with Lilith. Lilith is out there making, you know, in a certain house for you. It's in a certain house right now. It's making aspects. It's making aspects to planets. And then that tells its own story as well. And there's a lot. There's other ones too. And I'm just going to say right off the bat, other than Chiron, you start throwing some of these other ones out here at me. I'm not going to know them off the top of my head. I have looked them up, but again, this just gets all the different charts, all the different things. It gets kind of massive. And so, all right. Interesting. Pepper says her son's Aries, but she attracts water and earth signs. Well, I'd be curious about what else is in your chart. Because like my sun sign is Cap, which is earth, but my chart is mostly, I have a lot of earth in my chart, but my chart is mostly air. If I had to pick which sign or which element is the strongest, a heavy air chart. So, you know, that can have different aspects. Air clicks with fire better than earth clicks with fire. So it's interesting. But, you know, the other piece I look at, and this is what I'm interested in yours, Pepper, is I have hardly any water in my chart. As I've said almost every week, I talk about this. And so I attract a lot of water signs. And so it's very interesting that I think sometimes you will pull in the energy that you lack. And so you may have a very air and, or a very, very fire and air energy in your chart, and that might be why you're seeing lots of water and earth in the people around you. It's almost like, you know, the two halves of a coin completing each other. So, you know, and or if you just think about like nature, how everything will move to equilibrium. You know, our whole weather system is all temperature and water equilibrating around the entire globe, or trying to equilibrate. It's the same thing there. You know, I think interactions with people, it tries to hit a balance. So, you know, if you're a very heavy, you know, if you had a chart that was all earth, you probably wouldn't have a lot of earth people around you, but you would be seeing the other three elements coming into your life from a lot of folks. Again, just world according to map, but I believe that. Yeah, I'd agree, Steph, on the Lilith thing. All right, let's keep going down here. D has hardly any earth in her chart. Yeah, so I'm the water equivalent of that. I have one water planet in all mine. Everything else, and even like the rising and the nodes. We didn't get into that. I'll try to get into the nodes then too. But I also want to get into. See, I knew they're going to come home soon. Okay, I do want to get into make sure I hit the rest of these houses. So the ninth house is again, think kind of Jupiter energy on this. So this is exploration, education, knowledge, travel. So just think again, that kind of explorational energy, and that can manifest in a lot of different ways. You know, it can manifest in a lot of spiritual faith things coming there. It can be searching in that area. It can be formal education, learning about things. It can be literal travel, exploring, doing things. So that's the ninth house. If you have a lot of stuff going on in the ninth house, or if you do a solar or lunar return chart where there's a lot of things going on in the ninth house, that's I would view that as a very kind of extroverted, explorational type energy. And then depending on all the information, can kind of hint towards what that looks like. 10th house is the midheaven, so that's like at the top, and that is. So there's a little bit of a difference here. You know, I already said that like sixth house, there's that service element and how you interact with other people. 10th is like the big public persona achievement. If you view almost like, you know, if you view almost like your LinkedIn profile or something, it is like your public professional image, achievements, career. So if there's a lot of stuff going on in that house, that tends to be where it's like the sixth house, and maybe like job changes or job function changes. 10th house is like big achievement type stuff, you know, like promotions would fall into the 10th house, or, you know, big major job changes and things would fall into the 10th house. I'm going through these so I can get to like questions on the rest of these things. 11th house that's relationships. You know, Shine was asking earlier about that one, but that's platonic. That is friendship. So 11th house is the friendship type house. If you have a lot of energy and things going on there, that's more going to be in your peer and social group. It's not romantic. It's not romance type things. And so, yeah, so we got that. And then finally the 12th. The 12th is an interesting one. Again, I kind of view it as kind of that Pisces deathbed perspective, but the 12th is kind of subconscious, psychological. It's probably the hardest one to try to explain, but much kind of like the Lilith, although it's not necessarily, you know, hidden away desire type stuff. It's the subconscious stuff that's cooking. So if you got a lot of stuff going on in your 12th house, that's, you know, a lot of, I would say, subconscious and kind of like mental things going on. If you have a lot of rough aspects in your birth chart in the 12th house, that can actually, you know, not in every case, because, you know, there's a lot of things that go along with it, but that can actually indicate that you may have some, you know, mental health difficulties going on things. And so it's 12th house is an interesting one, but it's again not a very obvious how that plays out. If you kind of think about it, and then they do go in kind of sets of 4, or you can even look at some of them in sets of 3. So if you look at like 4, 8, and 12, they're all kind of like the behind the scenes. 4 is your like home, domestic, hidden. 8 is that whole, you know, sex, death, and taxes. So it's kind of like big transformations, but can be kind of more behind closed doors type things. And then 12th is kind of subconscious type stuff. So yeah, so I hope that helps. Yeah, Teresa, it gets tough. There are different options, and I could even say I gave you a couple things to try. And so D gave you an idea there to try this. There's different things you can try to at least try to back in the best you can. And do it, like I said, the biggest sources of error can be the setting the houses and where your moon's at. That's where I mean, you still get information. It's just those are the pieces, and the bigger the estimate on the time, the bigger the or the less kind of precision you'll have in what comes up. But it's not that that you can't get things of value out of it. Pepper asked earlier about, and then she posted in. Yeah, so Pepper's Gut said Sun, Aries, rising Pisces. So, Sun is more, I view that as like your core self. So I'd say your core energy is in Aries. Rising signs, a lot of times kind of, some people say it's like the mask you put onto the world, or first impressions, or how people initially will perceive you. So that's very interesting. I always say that the signs next to each other are very big, like pendulum swings. A Pisces is very different than an Aries. So, that may indicate, again, I'm doing generalizations here, that you may be a person that people are surprised after they get to know you after a while, that you do things or act in ways that they didn't see coming, and I get surprised by it. Moon and Scorpio. So, that's, as I said before, Scorpio and Cap, in my opinion, are the two most intense energies out there. And, whereas Cap, even though it's a yin sign, I feel that the Cap intensity is more projected out, whereas the Scorpio intensity is more, again, hidden. You don't necessarily see it. And so having your emotional world, your moon, your emotional state in that Scorpio energy, that typically I would say that is somebody that has very intense emotions, is a very emotional, intense person, but maybe doesn't express it. I was kind of, again, view it, Scorpio, it's kind of like spy energy. It's, they don't show their cards. It's that kind of thing. So, which is really interesting combined to an Aries, which is almost, in my view, kind of the opposite of that Aries will just throw their stuff out there and not give a shit. So, so you have some interesting combos in there. And then Venus and Taurus. So that's an interesting one in that we don't talk about this a lot, but so it differs male, female, and it also differs based on what you're attracted to. So just kind of apply this. I'm going to go like your general kind of hetero mindset here, but you can apply this in other dimensions as well. So if you think about it in general, a female, the Venus energy is how you express love, emotion, and your Mars planet and Mars energy is what you'll be attracted to. And if you just think about it, it's the opposite for guys. So, guys, the Mars energy is kind of the energy they put out, and then the Venus energy is what they would be attracted to. So, hopefully that makes sense. So, you in general would attract partners that would have kind of their Venus and Taurus as well, then, because that's what they would be attracted to. So, and it also shows how just in general in that space, then that is Taurus, again, stable and indulgent. So, stability and likes things, they indulge their senses. And I don't even know how far this has gone. I'm just seeing that I have new comments down there. I've just been rambling here. D has it, Moon and Scorpio, very private, loyal. Again, it's because again, that's emotions. So it's, you're deep. Some of the other signs, I'm not going to say them because somebody will say I'm like picking on a sign here, but some other moons and other signs are a little more flighty. It's not going to be, you may not have that staying power, but that with that intensity comes staying power and commitment. So hopefully that makes sense. All right, here. All right, so Steph's saying she's got Pluto and Uranus in her 12th house. So remember what I said. And don't take this the wrong way, but and this is just, it works for me. I've heard this before. It doesn't mean it's going to work for everybody, but I've heard it said that the house where Pluto's in is a house that's going to always be a challenge. So keep that in mind. And Uranus is kind of where that wild card is on there. So that's an interesting, I guess. So you got an interesting combo there of having those two planets cooking in your 12th house. So very, very interesting. Yep, there you go. Mars and Gemini. Now, I'll say for mine in my chart, if I had to say just stereotypical, the 12 signs, I've had other people try to like explain this to me in a different way. The sign I would just off the top of my head say, yeah, not attracted to at all is where my Venus is. So I find that very, very interesting. So it's not when I got that and read that, I'm like, yeah, no way, because that's not my thing. But yeah, it's interesting. But I say in general, it seems to hold up. All right. Yeah, it's true, D. There's not, yeah, other than they're just in that same house, they're not aspecting each other at all. And really, in the same house, you'd be talking about conjunct would be overlapping each other. And, there's different guidelines on that. So I'm doing this off the top of my head. But conjunct, I think, has got the broadest. So that's like somewhere like 8 to 10 degrees. But in your case there, they're 20 degrees apart from each other. So, yeah, they're not. They're not conjunct. Yeah, it's more. I would look more at like just the energy of having them in that house, more than. Now I forget, Steph. What's your? Do you know your rising? I'm just curious as to what signs on that 12th house. Okay, so yeah, just let me know if you want to. There, we still got a little bit of time here. If anybody's got any other questions or wants a card. Then the other piece I just wanted to talk about, which we never really get to talk much about, but I actually like, is there's something else called a north node and a south node, and you'll see this on your birth chart. And the best way I describe this, but again, this is world according to Matt. Your north node is, and they'll be opposite of each other. So your north and south node are just so there's basically 6 pairs of signs that this axis can fall into. And so how I describe it is your north node is the sign or the energy that is your syllabus for this life. It is the energy that you need to have more of and express more of. And the opposite sign, your south node, is kind of the energy that you go into this life with a PhD in. So it's the one that you're very strong in, can actually maybe overuse. And if you think about these pairs, the pairs are very opposite of each other. So in my case, and I've shared this before, I have tons of Libra energy, and my south node is in Libra. So, kind of diplomatic, indirectly, it's again cardinal sign, but drive things indirectly. So my north node is in Aries. It's be more assertive, be more aggressive, be more push harder kind of thing. And I gotta say, honestly, it's funny because I don't think anyone's ever. I've been accused of picking on lots of different signs over the years, and I try not to. I don't think any of them are good or bad, but it's funny because kind of full disclosure here, and I don't want to offend anyone. It's funny that is my north node, because if I had to say stereotypical, I know Sarah's already mentioned, she's got, one sign that kind of stereotypically gets under her skin. I would say, Aries energy is the one out of the 12 that'll get under my skin the fastest. It's just, but again, why? Because even in my chart, not only the south node, but even in my chart, I have tons of Libra. It's my strong, even though I'm a Cap, there's something called a Mullen chart, which gives you like the strengths of the planets and the strengths of the signs. And even though I'm a Cap, my Libra energy is the strongest out of that, and so it's opposite. So that's where you're gonna have the tension. Is the one that's the least like you. So it's gonna give me a little more. But if you want to subscribe to this north node south node thing, I need to be more like that. So it might bug me, but I got to be more like those folks. Screw it, just do it. Energy. So anyway, here. Yep. Totally get it, D. So yeah, it's very interesting. So it's again, I'm a very air. I have lots of air in my sign, so it's got to be lots of air in my chart. It's again, lots of thinking, communicating, not so much fire, which is the doing piece. So Virgo, that's really interesting, Steph. So Virgo in the 12th. So I see that energy, since Virgo is so detail oriented on things. That whole kind of inner world of the 12th house. My first impression on that is lots of introspection. Not knowing you, I would almost predict that you're somebody that spends a lot of mental energy kind of inward, focus things inwards, maybe ruminating on things, or maybe rehashing things, or maybe almost like somebody thinking about their thoughts kind of deal. And so again, I don't know if that applies or not, but particularly then with the Pluto and the Uranus in there, I could see that as you could really go down this kind of internal rabbit hole of taking these internal thoughts and just picking them apart and going very, very deep, and maybe getting either lost in your thoughts or thinking about things that could upset you, or if you go along those lines. So Brianna, yeah, it's funny, Brianna, a lot of times that opposite energy, opposites attract. So there's tension on the opposites, but there's that like magnetism there as well. So it's really interesting. Those pairings typically, it's funny when you read things, people view it differently. Some view those as tough aspects because there is that different piece. I view generally opposites and signs as a big positive. And again, you can have opposites in different things, we always think sun, but it can apply in a lot of different functions. So thank you, Teresa, for joining us. I'm glad everybody joined us. Actually, we're getting close on time here. So all right, I don't want to get caught here. Yeah, Pepper, well, thank you. I don't mean to bash them at all. I'm just saying that's the generally, I always think of like the, it's funny. Like I remember when I would travel a lot, in the airport, and if there's somebody like, in the bar or like in the gate, just being like really loud and kind of brash. I always view that as that energy. I don't even know whether that's fair or not, but I kind of view it that way. So, all right. Steph, awesome. Glad that applied. All right. Yes, intercepted planets. That's a. I'm trying to, and don't get me wrong on this, anybody on this. There's so much to this, and you get so complicated that I'm trying to like slowly build this out, kind of on like platforms. And again, eventually, Sarah and I are going to do more class type things to kind of build this stuff out. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot to this. There's a lot to this that I haven't even gotten to yet, because as I said, I'm like Sarah. I'm probably about like 3 years into digging into this stuff, and I actually thought it was, to be, full disclosure, I actually thought it was bullshit until I started digging into it a little more, and then I started actually experimenting. I'm like, okay, well, I'll do these things. And even with those solar lunar returns, I'm like, I'll start making predictions. And then I'd have people that would contact me, and I'm like, well, let me do this for you, and here's my predictions, and tell me if they match out. And then it started all working out. So I was like, okay, there's something to it. So I flipped, and now I believe in it. Anyway, well, thank you, Dee. I'm glad you guys found it interesting. Dolly, sorry you're getting a migraine. Denise wants a card. I'm sorry I missed that, Denise. All right. I can definitely get this in here. This will be probably our final thing for the night. It was Denise that wants the card. Okay, so Denise, think of your question. Ooh. Again, not as bad as it might look, but there is a message to this, and I will eventually get this right. I don't know why I can't get my right and left on this thing. 8 of Swords. So if you kind of look at this imagery, and different cards have different ways on it, but you see her with all the swords around her. She's kind of boxed in. I kind of view this as the trapped card. So this can indicate you're feeling trapped or you're feeling stuck. But again, remember that swords are kind of air energy, so it's thoughts and communications. So sometimes you are stuck by maybe things that are more on the thoughts, or things that you're thinking, or things that other people are saying. And so there may be a way out. It's not that you are condemned to be in this situation, but whatever your question was, this card and energy leads me to think that there's an element of this that you're feeling stuck or stagnated by. And so give that some thought and think of maybe what's the best way to get yourself unstuck, or what's the root cause of having you be stuck. So I hope that helps. Ruth wants, I can do one real quick here. Yeah, D makes a good point. We don't get into, there's smaller aspects And just for simplicity, we don't get into doing those on here. I mean, we can if we dig into stuff, but yeah, D makes a good point. That's also why like some of these asteroids and things, like, you know, it's just layers and it just adds more to it and it starts getting a little more complex. That's like, even when I look at aspects, I only do like the really strong aspects. I don't go out. Even within like some of the allowables, like I told you, like that one, I think conjunct's like 8 to 10 degree. I don't even look at, like, I keep it very, very close and exact when I'm looking at things that are going on. All right, Ruth, Four of Wands. And if you think of 4 stakes or 4 things, this is stability. If you think of like a square, so this is the card of stability. Sometimes we'll view this as a card of kind of home and marriage, but I view this as a stable card. So this is energy that whatever your question was, the message that's coming through is stability. So hopefully that's positive and reassuring, but I would expect some source of stability to come from in your answer there. All right. Chiron, yeah, I can do that really quick. And, you know, anyone else wants to weigh in, I know Dee knows a lot about this as well on this. I just want to say, I'm glad these seem to resonate from what people are saying. You know, you can never, you know, I'm just saying what comes up on these. I don't know what your questions are and stuff. Chiron, kind of the wounded healer. So I always view kind of where Chiron is, shows where there was some kind of wound, or maybe you're coming into this life with that type of wound. And it can give aspects depending on what sign and what house it's in as to kind of what that wound is and where you may need to put energy for healing in this life. And then on a smaller level, if you look at kind of like a solar return or a lunar return, it can show where maybe there's going to be some trouble or some upset in the next month or in the next year. So not nearly as major as you would see in a birth chart, but again, indicates as to some things in here. So yeah, it's kind of like wounded healer. So at least I kind of always interpret that as it shows where the wound was, but then it also shows what you need to do to heal that wound. So it's kind of both sides of it. I hope that makes sense. And I appreciate you guys hanging on. I made it the hour. I didn't know how long this was going to go, if people were going to show up to hear me talk. So I'm glad, again, I'm glad everybody was able to come on and join with me. We'll be on next week. I got to talk to Sarah. She will either go solo on next Tuesday or we'll do the show on Wednesday. It's my birthday next week, next Tuesday. So I will be out celebrating. We have theater tickets, so I'm going to be out at the theater. So I'm going to miss the Tuesday show. So we'll either do it Wednesday or Sarah will go solo. So until then, again, happy solstice to everyone that observes for today, and those that observe a Merry Christmas. And I will see you all on Sunday for Sunday Night Dead, and then either on the 28th or 29th. So thanks again, everybody, and have a fantastic week. Take care.